Tom, thank you so much for joining me. You're looking good.
Yeah.
and, and actually, people who aren't watching the video but are listening on the podcast won't know this, but you've got quite an image, haven't you? I mean, you are a white man with dreadlocks, and you're wearing a top hat, and you wear sort of glitzy shirts and bejeweled and bedazzled jackets, and also you've got very funky boots. So where did this come from? Why did you do this, Tom?
I think any speaker, they need to walk the talk. And so if I'm talking about creativity or I'm talking about the groove, I'm not just going to put up a PowerPoint slide saying, here's the groove, please get out of your comfort zone. Because it's, I have actually seen people do that. But in walking the talk, I have to be at the summit, just so people can set off for base camp. I need to be further than they are. And also, I need to kind of represent somebody who lives like that all the time. I go down the supermarket looking like this. And I would say, if you ever see anybody doing the talk and they're dressed like this or they're wearing an orange waistcoat, as soon as they get off stage, they take it off and they fold it up neatly for their next talk. Don't pay them. Because they need to be living creativity. You can't just do an hour of creativity. So that's what I do. I kind of represent being creative. But meet me in the airport bar, and I'll probably got half the people singing, because that's what I do.
Fantastic. I mean, obviously this stems back as well to your wonderful career in music, and people will know you from Scritti Politti, and being Italian, I know that that's about political writings. Was that a name chosen for a reason? Is there a story behind that name?
Well, we were a very kind of empowering band. Punk rock that we came out of originally was all about empowering people to make their own music. So Scritti Politti was, it means political writings, and it was from a book by an Italian guy called Antonio Gramsci, and he wrote about the power of culture as a way of social control, really, because he said if you control the common sense, the mindset of the people, then you don't need guns, you don't need laws so much. So he was talking about that in a kind of right-wing way. We were talking about it in a more left-wing way. So let's empower people to make their own records, to find out where the pressing plant is. So you don't need record companies, you don't need all these filters that were around saying you can either make a record or you can't, which is what record company execs did. We just put all the costs on our record sleeves. We have people knocking on the door. There was no kind of internet, right? So we put our address on the record sleeves, and people would come and knock on the door and say, we want to make our own record. And we'd get out the yellow pages and we'd look up the nearest recording studio to their band, So Scritti Politti was a kind of attitude more than a name.
Fantastic. And are there any rock and roll stories you can share? Other names, I love name dropping. So if you can drop some names and tell me a couple of stories, that we can air. Remember, we need to air this.
All right, yeah. Well, later on, this was interesting because we were based in Camden Town, and Madness were also based in Camden Town, and we used to see each other about. And I used to go and sit by the canal sometimes and just sort of chill out. And Mark, the bass player, I'd see him riding by on his bike. And one day he just stopped and said, "You're Tom, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah, you're Mark, aren't you?" He said, "We've just opened a studio and we're looking for people to test it out. Do you want to come and test it out?" And that was a time when things had gone, I'd kind of gone solo at that point. I'd become a songwriter. And so I had some songs. So I said, "Yeah, I'll come and test it out." Then he said, "Well, we're setting up a record label." So I got them all. Everybody, Suggs, everybody, they all came. I got them all playing on my demos. And then I took them upstairs to their manager and I said, "What do you think of my demos?" Of course, he had to sign me because otherwise he'd have said, everybody's playing his rubbish, and they were his band. So that's how I kind of got in with them. And through them, we were doing some recording at Westway Studios Clive Langer's, their producer studio. And they were working with David Bowie. And I had this little programming room upstairs from the main studio. And David used to come up and he'd bring everybody upstairs and say, yeah, we'll go down later once they've set it all up. But where Tom is, that's where it's all happening. I had this tiny computer at the time, one of the first ones. And we just used to make these little they never got released, but whenever we needed a drink, he'd say, Tom, you know all the places that are open, because it's very often late night. So he'd send me out with his driver in his limo to go, you know, I knew some Greek restaurant in Westbourne Grove or something. So they're lovely, clean rock and roll stories, but the rest I tend to tell to CEOs in the bar, because I don't tell them from the stage because they're so radical. You wouldn't want to base your company on the sort of risks that we took. However, CEOs and the board, they've taken those risks. They wouldn't be at the top if they hadn't taken those risks. So we often have a couple of Jack Daniels just for old time's sake.
Well, anyway, some very good name dropping there. I'll give you a star for that. That was good. That was good. So you touched earlier on, you talked about creativity. You've talked a bit about changing mindsets. You talked about culture. These are all things that actually you talk about now as well as part of your speaking.
Yeah.
Were you always interested in that? Was that something, or is that something that's developed?
I think I've always, it's a curious thing. I've only realised this fairly recently, but in my life, anywhere I've been, anything I've learned, I've always thought, how would I communicate that? And I think I come from a very working class family. My mum saw I was good at art, and so she was trying to get me to be a graphic designer from a really early age. So we'd see something and she'd say, yeah, how can we advertise that? How can we advertise? And we were, I remember at school, we had this, we need to make a poster. So for a swimming pool we were fundraising for. My poster won the competition, and it was because of me and her talking about it. So consequently, when I got into personal development and psychology and how to work with the kind of imposter syndrome, which I know is a constant amongst everybody, whether they own up to it or not. I thought, right, so I'd learned a kind of self-help language that I know the cool people don't like. So I thought, I'm going to write it as a remix process, and I'm going to give it to my friends. And the thing about the remix process, which is on my website, and I mention in the talks, and sometimes that is the focus of the talks, is that anybody can relate to it, anybody can do it, and it deals with that kind of inner critic that downward spiral that we all have. I showed it to a very besuited trainer who I was networked to the other day, and I thought, wow, this guy is really the business. And he was reading part of it, and he's reading it. He said, I see. I've become that waste of space that's just messing up everything for everyone. It'd be better off if I'm not here. And he said, I didn't know other people thought that. So it's universal, that inner critic. And so having designed this way of clearing it, I just want to be out there spreading it. It's my DNA.
No, and it's fantastic. And for those people who don't know about the 7-step remix process, I mean, we used it slightly differently in the office. Rather than sort of attaching it to imposter syndrome, we used it when we were trying to change our feeling and our reaction and our mindset about a situation. And it worked so well, and it's so easy. And I've actually got it pinned on my wall you can't see it on the video, it's on the other wall there.
Right.
So I think it's really clever and it's really good. And what's lovely is it relates to music. So I think from a changing mindset point of view, whether it's about imposter syndrome or even how you feel about something, I think it's just brilliant. So I loved it. So
I just want to say at this point that 20 years ago, I worked with a teacher called K. Bradford Brown, Dr. K. Bradford Brown, and he kind of invented that way of of clear in the mind. It's just that his language was a bit kind of 20-year-old self-help language. So I brought it all to remix, erase, record, pause. But really, I'm standing on the shoulders of giants here because, which I think is fine. You know, I don't claim to everything I do. I'm kind of eclectic. I pick things up from all over the place, and then I put them together in a way that, again, I think it's my mum's influence. How can we get this to the most people? That's.
You're like me, I'm eclectic. I collect all sorts of weird speakers. Brilliant speakers, I should say. Brilliant speakers. And anyway, so we should really call you the remix evangelist. But the area that I also want to talk to you about, because I mean, that's a wonderful topic area. And I'm going to share in the show notes a link so people can see it for themselves. And if they need to change their mindset, it's actually really straightforward.
Right.
And if they need help, obviously they can invite you in to come and speak to them. But what I loved about you when I first saw you, for me, it was what you call instant teamwork. Now, I've been in this business a long time, as you know. I started very young, of course, and I've seen a lot of musicians who speak and who use music, and they might use percussion, they might use other kinds of music, and they get people involved as part of their speaking. But I have never seen anyone create instant teamwork and have everybody enjoying it, loving it, part of it, and energized in minutes. I had never seen that. And when I experienced that, I thought, Tom, that is amazing. How did you know you had that gift? How did you realize you could do that? Because that's rare.
We were at, this was 30 years ago, we were at a gig in Berlin, and we were on stage, everyone was grooving, and then there was a power cut. And I could see the promoters, you know, the little torches coming on off stage, just panicking, and I just carried on. I was playing, I was just playing a basic beat, and I just started singing, yo, yo, and then the audience came, yo, 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 and then I just carried on. The audience was just getting kind of more and more involved. And then all the lights came on, all the power came on, and Green came in with a, you know, kind of reggae chop. Neil came in with a doo-doo, doo-doo, doo. And I remember this, and I thought, wow, you can kind of, you can make something out of a disaster, out of chaos. And you know what? Everyone said you must have engineered that, because it was so slick the way it came in, and the audience became so engaged at that point. And it took me 20 years to then, you know, do all that I needed to do within the music business, you know, and all the setup, instant teamwork. But I remembered that. I went out and bought 200 drums, and I thought, rather than just do call and response, let's have everybody drumming. And we were some of the first people to do that. There's lots of people doing it now, but I clicked that people think they're this far away from their creativity, right? They're about that far away, and all you got to do is that.
Yeah, I mean, no one can see this on a podcast, but you're actually you're gesticulating and you're showing us sort of.
Oh yeah. So a big distance and a small distance. Yeah.
It doesn't work. We've got a great face, both of us, for radio. So no, and it does work, and you do it so well. And I actually got so into it, which is not like me in that kind of stuff. Normally, I'm the one hiding at the back, even though I'm quite outgoing. I almost had to go to hospital because I damaged my wrist. I got so excited with that drum. Anyway, so
I'll put that as a quote on my website. I almost had to go to the hospital having work.
Yeah, you'll have to put that on there. So okay, so you go in, you get everybody energized, you get everybody working together, you get them a little bit competitive as well during the session.
Yeah.
What happens when you go away? How do you sustain that? How is that team that has been built, and you know, all of that great energy, how does that continue?
They don't have drums at home. They don't have the confidence to do that sort of thing in their family. At first, when I set out, I was quite naive. I thought, great, I've kind of woken up something in them. And even in kind of programs where I've taught them a rhythm on cups. There's a cup song that I did with Hertz, with all these teams in Hertz. I taught them all in Ireland. And then they invited me individually to go and visit them in Europe, and I went and visit them. They had these cups. I thought, and I had videos online. Some people have really gone for it. Others took me to it's almost like a display case, you know, of trophies. They said, yeah, all that stuff from the conference we've got in here. And they didn't use it. So I realized it's, you know what I was saying earlier about I like to transmit and I like to teach. I realized that sometimes my presence is needed. However, in order to rewire the brain, which is what drumming does, there's very simple things you can do. And I tell them this: go clean your teeth with your left hand or the other hand. If you clean your teeth with that hand, clean your teeth with that hand. If you use your phone a lot, use the other hand. There's all these things that I tell them to go away and do, and they can do those, even if it's just in the bar. You're toasting each other with the other. That is rewiring the brain. Now, and the weird thing is, I've seen whole bars of people do that, and it becomes a team exercise. They start to point out to each other they're not doing it, and they should be doing it. So it's not musical. It's not, but there's an element of creativity and competition and continuity in it. And one group, they said their morning meetings, they had drum written on the wall, and it was kind of demonstrate, demonstrate commitment. Oh, now what was it? I can't remember what the R was.
Maybe it was remember.
Yeah, I'll remember. If you're ever on a podcast, yeah. And so they invent things themselves. I would love to do, to set up drum rooms in their companies and have a big wall with a screen on it and have me say, all right, everybody, it's Monday morning, let's go. But
actually, do you know what? I think that's a great way to start the day to energize people.
It is, yeah.
Go, and drum for 5 minutes. Absolutely. Or when you're feeling really stressed out, it's really brilliant. And I know that with some of your clients, they've actually purchased a drum or two as a memory.
Yeah.
And then people will come in and they'll play that. Yeah, no, I love that. So I've never forgotten that session, and which is how you and I ended up working together. And so, I mean, you're very active. Your brain is always going. You're full of energy. You're amazing. What do you do when you want to relax?
Well, I'd love to say I go scuba diving, because I love scuba diving, but I don't go scuba diving very often. On Sundays, again, it's all about permission. I think my life is all about permission to be creative. And again, this is a way to sustain the energy. We do something called black tie, white lie, where, because we're getting older now, and over about 40, you can't stay up all night anymore. So we pretend we've been up all night. We get a good night's sleep Saturday night. We pretend we've been up. We get dressed up in black tie, ball gowns. The women smudge their mascara and carry their little stilettos. And we meet up. We meet in the middle of Waterloo Bridge, and we have an old shopping trolley, which looks like we just found it in the street. It's got a beatbox in it. And we dance and we sing, and we have kind of chance cards. People on the bottom who are just listening won't see these, but you can see them here. So black tie, white lie. And the white lie is we haven't been up all night. The black ties were all very elegant and disheveled. And it means we can go and dance in fountains. We can give people roses. On the bridge, we throw roses to the pleasure boats underneath, and they're shouting up at us and applauding. And I mean, the thing about the bridge, lots of barriers have gone up on the bridges since the terrorist attack. We continue to bring barriers down, not physically, but between Londoners, because people come and dance with us, kids come and sing. Kids are fascinated, so we're all about connection. So is that relaxing?
I was just about to say that.
I find it relaxing because you know what? I've realised I can't really go to parties anymore and just stand and chat about the price of property, or
Oh,
geez.
that's a shame. I've got one coming up. I shan't invite you then.
I'm coming. But I'll tell you,
Tom,
it's going to be quite lively.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
You mentioned the word permission. Why do you say you need permission to be creative?
Well, I think it's to do with our education system, because if you imagine how we grow up, there's generally one or two people in the class who are good at music, or John is the one who can draw. I was the one who could draw in our class. So I got used to getting a gold star, but I saw other people give up. It's the way our education system is built on hierarchy. I mean, a lot of our life is built on hierarchy. Social media, in a way, is built on hierarchy. My breakfast is better than yours. Here's a photo of it. So we all need, what I said at the beginning, I need to be on the top of the mountain so others can set off for base camp. We all need permission to just do a bit, and not have to be the best. And instant teamwork is all about that as well. I mean, you said when you got involved, you were just kind of drawn in. That's because I speak to a part of the mind that bypasses the critical voice. Some people say, the spiritual people say, I go straight for the soul. I speak to the spirit. And the spirit is going, great, I've been waiting for you to turn up. What took you so long? Because we're not educated that way. We're educated, pass exams, remember stuff. It's all memory tests. And so that's quite, what was the question again?
we would fail the memory test on both of us. That's hilarious. The question was about permission. I think you've answered it. I think.
Yeah. Well, I am the permission giver. That's why my tag is the rhythmic ringmaster, because the ringmaster doesn't do everything in the circus. He or she just says, okay, and now we've got this happening. Now we've got this happening. Now we've got that, and that whole thing about here's a beat, the lights are off. Do you know what? I've just realised why that Berlin thing worked. It was because the lights were off. So everybody was safe. Nobody was judging themselves. Am I the best singer here? And I'll tell you one thing about venues. If I do an event in a castle, I notice people get involved quicker. Someone I saw on a networking site, they've got a venue on an island, and I thought I'd love to do a gig there, because the safer people feel, then their barriers come down.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one other thing. My grandmother, I learned this. She was in London in the war, and she said when the bombs were dropping during the Blitz, she was an East Ender. They'd all go down into the subway stations, and the kids were scared, so they would sing to the kids to calm them down. Now, they didn't say, I'd better do 3 months of singing lessons before I sing to the children. They just sang. And so in those times of crisis, that's when people come together. When they came up, someone's house would have been bombed. They wouldn't have said, we'll apply to the council. They said, all right, well, Johnny can come and stay with us. They rehoused each other as that kind of crisis went on. It went on every night. She said that was the best time, the worst time of her life. It was the best time because those connections were being made. So again, I kind of go around the world building. I don't say this to clients, but I'm going to create a crisis in your conference in order to bring people together. But if I say we're all going to sing or we're all going to drum, there is something going on in people going, why didn't I take annual leave? But then when we start, they go, I'm so glad I came.
I love that. Why didn't I take annual leave? That's brilliant. So finally, Tom, you've gone from music, with Scritti Politti, a musical career. You've become, a drummer, creating teams with your drumming, and now you've added speaking to that. So if you were looking back at Tom, who was starting to speak for clients at conferences and events, what advice would you give young Tom?
I would say, because I've done so many things in my life. I've built houses in Africa. I've kind of helped a well be dug so an orphanage could be irrigated. You know, all this stuff. A lot of it I haven't filmed, and now I would like to include some of that in my show reel, not to say what a good guy I am, but just what I want to say and what my message is be creative all the time. Don't wait for the creativity session or the away day or the, you know, and so if I look back, you know, we've built whole castles in the pub car park where we live out of cardboard boxes with kids during a bank holiday. I have a few bits of footage of that, but I would say young Tom kind of cajole a camera person to follow you around, and I do this unashamedly. If I'm at a conference and I think, oh, nobody's filming it, but I see someone filming it on their phone, I go and bribe them, anything. I buy them drinks, I offer them holidays to get that footage, because it's really valuable. And I see so many people go, oh yeah, and the thing is, you're not in the headspace of logistics when you're preparing to get on stage. You don't care about anything about that anymore. You're just flooded with a different sort of chemical and different purpose. You're just out there to deliver to the audience. You're not thinking, well, I hope someone's capturing this in high definition. So it's really get that organized and get someone who'll take that role on for each event or each thing you do, and then forget about it, and then call them the next day, say, can I have that footage, please?
I think that's brilliant advice. And it's also excellent advice for a speaker, because you've got a chance to review your session and look at it. And lots of speakers don't do that. And I think it's great to stand back and say, you know, what's
Absolutely.
good? How can I improve?
Watching James Taylor, I was listening to James Taylor's podcast, and he said he does this, right? He has a whole team with him, and one person in his team is the filmmaker. And he said he watches it in order to see, you know, what he could improve. And I absolutely love that, because I do the same. And some people just will not watch themselves, or they won't listen to them. They say, oh, I hate the sound of my voice. You know, I found James really inspiring in that way. He treats it. I mean, it's like an expedition for him. You know, a real adventure, and he's all about, how do I deliver more? How do I deliver more? How do I deliver more? So.
And do you know what, Tom? We're ending on a wonderful note, because you're always so generous about everybody. And we're going to be generous about you, Tom. You're a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.